everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for week 3 of BFSG's 4-part summer webinar series. Today, a really fun topic, the formula for feel-good success with Laura Dewey.
Thanks, Chad. Well, as Chad mentioned, my name is Tina Shackman. I am a senior retirement plan consultant with BFSG, and I am delighted to introduce our speaker today, Laura Dewey. She's a professional certified coach and earned a master's degree in spiritual psychology. She founded the Self-Leadership Lab to help people manage their inner voice and unlock their potential. And I had the opportunity to work with her several years ago and was able to implement many of her practical tools and tips into my everyday life. And it was really more to kind of open up my mindset so that I could help people, help myself be more introspective and be more empathetic to others. And I really appreciated her relatable and compassionate style of coaching. So I'm excited to hear her insights into how to take control of your life and your career using the formula for good success, feel good success. So I'll turn it over to Laura now.
Oh, Tina, thank you. It's so wonderful to hear you say those things, that my work affected you in those ways. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, BFSG, for inviting me and for really your extraordinary support, communication, and all of that to make this possible. Well, welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Formula for Feel Good Success. I cannot wait to share tips and tools with you today. Tina just did a fantastic introduction to me. My name is Laura Dewey, and I want to begin by asking you to share 2 words that describe you in this moment in the chat. Let's get those fingers on the keyboard. Two words to describe you in this moment. Right now, I am a little cold and I am present. How about you? There's a method to this madness.
Right, group so far. We got to get them warmed up.
Yeah, I guess we do. Yeah, the chat is disabled. I'm having that same experience. It says host and panelist and not allowing chats from others. Thank you, everyone, for letting us know.
Interesting. Maybe they can drop it into the Q&A box instead, and I could just dismiss them as we see them.
Terrific. And will the chat be able to come up? Do you know?
I'm working on that technical difficulty.
Okay, super duper. So the reason I ask this is, who knows where you were before you signed on to this webinar? And it's just a way to check in with yourself, get quiet, and pull your mind, body, and spirit into our time together. So there's method to that madness. Well, while you're here, something about one of these 2 statements or both attracted you to be here today. Discover ways to take control of your life and career, and learn 3 steps to make growing and changing feel good, even fun. I intend to fulfill those promises today. So as Chad mentioned, there is a workbook. I invite you, if you're not going to print it, that's cool, but at least pull it up on your screen, because we will be working with it. And have a piece of, if that's what you're doing, have a piece of paper and a pen handy so you can interact with the exercises. What I'm sharing today is potentially life-changing, and I'm not blowing smoke on that. It truly is. And you'll know why later, I hope. All right. We'll be doing self-awareness exercises. There will be a few polls to hear what's going on with you and to hear what's happening. You'll have a chance to practice what I teach today. I believe in experiential learning. Experiential learning helps helps you have the skills inside rather than some theory in a white binder you throw on a shelf. You know that white binder, don't you? So a practice and then a chance to identify what are your biggest takeaways from being here today. Well, here's the deal. Life and career success can feel a bit like this picture. Storm clouds, a roller coaster. The roller coaster is kind of getting deluged. I think many of us think that success is this beautiful 45-degree angle up, that it's smooth sailing, and it's not. It's a messy, messy process. And oftentimes it's plagued with being on an emotional roller coaster, plagued with, even if you built tremendous success, it just doesn't feel good inside. I've met so many people, I've coached so many people that say, I thought when I got X that I would be happy, and it hasn't come. This can all lead to you feeling just out of control. And this dude, this gremlin, is the one driving on that roller coaster. You're in the back seat and you're at the mercy of this thing, shifting you from side to side, up and down, and you have no control over what's happening in your life. It's like whatever's happening outside affects me inside. So what does it feel to be out of control? How can it feel to be out of control? Well, as I said, you're rocked by whatever's happening in the moment. That dude is driving, and you're at his or her mercy. Emotional roller coaster. You can feel stressed and overwhelmed. Very, very common. You can have a lack of clarity or direction. Everything's just kind of muddled up and cloudy in your mind. Spinning. A lot of people say that they spin. That can be happening. Procrastination and a lack of motivation. How many of you are feeling that? And then strained relationships. When you're stressed, when all these other things are happening, it's very hard to be present in your relationship, be emotionally even for your partner or your business associates or what have you. And so relationships do get strained. And all of this results in just a general state of dissatisfaction, lack of fulfillment. It's like, I thought life was different. Well, I want to ask you, this is our first self-awareness exercise. How do you feel overall in your life and career? Choose one that most resonates. And here are your choices. Rocked by whatever's happening in the moment, emotional, is basically what I just said. Now, there is one additional one at the bottom. It says, what are you talking about? I feel great. If that's you, check that box.
For this one group, you don't even need to type it into the Q&A box. I did put in the chat. Zoom's not going to let me turn back the chat for a webinar, but we'll use the Q&A for that. But this is actually live poll. It should have popped up on all of your screens, gathering responses. We'll leave it up for a little bit as we gather responses. And then I will close poll and I'll actually share the results so everybody can kind of see the percentages out here.
Excellent. I see it. Thank you, Chad. What are you feeling in this moment? Pick the one that most resonates with you.
I think with most responses in, let me close this thing out and I will share results with the group. Results should have just popped up right here. We have a really good spread across here, right? 10% rocked by whatever's happening, 6% emotional roller coaster, 11% stressed and overwhelmed. I know that feeling. 13% lack of clarity or direction, 20% are your second biggest one, procrastination and lack of motivation. Only a couple people say strained emotions or strained relationships. Dissatisfaction, lack of fulfillment. We have a good number of people. Our biggest one, what you're talking about, I feel great. So I think we have an audience that's pumped up and motivated. This is awesome. And then 9% just saying other out there saying, I don't know, it's not on the list, but I'm feeling something.
Excellent. It is wonderful that so many of you are feeling great. And you're here probably because you love to learn. Bring it on. What I teach today will benefit everyone. All right. So why do we feel this way in our lives sometimes for all but 23% of you? Well, burnout, overwhelm, and fatigue. Burnout especially is a feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, right? It's very hard to feel good when you're in one of these three states. And it's hard to rise out of it because you're just kind of stuck in it. Many of us, I was this way, we don't know there's another way. We think life is this way, and I don't think it can be different. Life is hard, and this is how it's supposed to be. I'm here to say not necessarily. You may have a lack of self-awareness, and that can you just stay in your default, do the same things, get the same results. That could be happening. You could have difficulty managing emotions. That really gets in the way of a quality life, and feeling good inside is being at the mercy of your emotions. Having external distractions, there's just so much going on, and you just never get around to changing. You may have a lot of fear about change, about stepping into the unknown. I know I've been there. Years ago, I'm a sober girl. I've been sober 20 years. And I knew I had a problem drinking forever, but I was terrified to do anything about it. Absolutely terrified. And thankfully, I eventually did, and I've been sober 20 years. You could be in a loop of negativity. And again, when we're down there, it's hard to lift ourselves out. And you just may feel complacent, like this is how it is. It's fine. It's good enough. Well, good enough is good, but why not go to very good or extraordinary? All right. I'm here to tell you that you don't have to stay in good enough. You don't have to stay in those other things that we just talked about. I want to help you put your hands on the steering wheel of your life. And how do we do that? Well, it's through this thing called self-leadership. And you may think, well, I lead myself. Yes, we all lead ourselves. We're all leading ourselves somewhere right now. Now, are we happy with where we're leading ourselves? Are we happy with how it feels inside of us when we're leading ourselves? There may be an opportunity here for you. So what is self-leadership? Well, there's a whole lot of things about this world that we have no control over. In fact, most of what happens in the world, we have no direct control over. But one thing we do have control over are our four walls, our thoughts, our beliefs, our words, and our actions. This is it. And I'm sorry to tell you that. This is the hard truth. I spent my life trying to control everyone and everything to arrange it the way I wanted. And that is a recipe for stress, a recipe for frustration. And once I realized that this is it, I could learn how to really own these four walls and create the life that I really want. All of these things create your results, and your results, your state of life, are a result of how you manage your four walls. All right, I think this is great news, because instead of being a victim of the world, oh, this is happening, oh, something great happened, I'm elated, something awful happened, I'm dejected, and I stay there for a long time, I ruminate on it, right? You don't have to be that. You have much more control than sometimes we remember. You can remain calm and still inside, even when it seems like all hell is breaking loose outside. That's great news. So let's boil it down. Self-leadership is about taking responsibility for the state of your life, not blaming others, not blaming the world, but really looking inside to see what you can do. Being aware. Remember, without awareness, you stay in your default. And then understanding that you have a choice, which is really what today is about. It's about leveraging the power of choice. And self-leadership is the stuff that no one taught us in school. I don't know about you, but I didn't learn any of this in school until my master's program, thankfully. But most of us do not get this education. So what are the benefits of being an effective self-leader? Well, you have your hands on the steering wheel of life. No longer are you a victim of that gremlin. You get to decide where you're going and how you get there. You're better able to manage your emotions. You can bounce back more quickly. When you're better able to manage your emotions, all kinds of good things happen. And you bounce back more quickly from setbacks. My favorite part is the mind is quieter. There's less stress, less overwhelm. And when your mind is quieter, you have more clarity, more motivation, and more drive. And you actually have space to think about things that are meaningful, things that you want to think about, rather than the little voice that can be spinning. You'll have stronger relationships and generally more satisfaction and fulfillment in your life and work. Now, if you lead a team, what can having a team of self-leaders do for you? Well, your team dynamics will be improved exponentially. Collaboration will be easier. People will be more open to others' ideas, less need to be right or to win. That's a relief. And they'll be more open to learning new skills. And all of this enhances teamwork and just makes more smooth sailing for your team, and obviously better results. All right. I want to introduce you to the 3-step process we use here in the Self-Leadership Lab. And this is what makes growing and changing feel good, even fun. Be highly self-aware, learn cool new skills, and do experiments and build habits. This is the formula for self-leadership. Let's break it down. So what does it mean to be highly self-aware? Well, if we just talk about awareness in general, if we're not aware of something, it simply doesn't exist. If I don't know there's a red car outside, it does not exist to me. So in order to grow and change, we have to be aware of something. We have to be aware that it exists, right? And it behooves us to be honest with ourselves about where we are. I know oftentimes I want to push that little voice that's telling me the truth. I want to push it aside. I want to say, no, that's not a problem. But really, your little voice will, will probably be telling you what's really happening with you. It may be saying, you need to take a break. You need to rest more. You need to do this. You need to do that. And it's easy to push that away. I compare self-awareness to GPS. GPS needs to know 2 things before you can use it. What are those? Yes. Where you are and where you're going. And the same is true for us. We need to know where we are and have an idea of where we're going in order to get there effectively. This is the opposite of autopilot. Autopilot, default, reacting the way you've always reacted in every situation. Bringing awareness allows you to change it up. And it's important in self-awareness that you always remember that you can make a choice. If you don't like what's happening, you can make a choice. Self-awareness comes first. Again, without it, nothing exists and you can't go to the next steps. All right, learn cool new skills is the second part. And I want to share your very, I was getting ahead of myself. And the tools that I teach in the Self-Leadership Lab are tools that no one taught us in school. We have this complex inner world. We may be doing one thing outside. I've met many leaders that are very measured outside, but they're suffering deeply inside. That's because this complex inner world has its that gremlin. It has its hands on the wheel, and no one teaches us how to navigate the world and navigate other humans. And the world is challenging, and other humans are challenging, and it's a wonder we can get along at all. Tools matter. You know, theories are okay, but having a concrete tool that you can pull out when you need it is everything. All right, the third step, do experiments and build habits. And this is really what makes growing fun. It gets you started. It, you know, that line between not doing and doing. A lot of you are procrastinating, you said in the survey. Not doing and doing. So you're not doing something and you need to do it. And there's a little veil between those 2 things, but it can feel like a bank vault door, right? It can feel like 14 feet thick, going from not doing to doing. When you agree with yourself to experiment once, to do something once, it's much easier to step over that threshold, and it gets you started. And when you get started, guess what? You get some cred with yourself. Instead of sitting there knowing I'm not doing what I said I'm going to do, not doing what I want to do, you said, yeah, I did it. I got started. And it gives you credibility, and that usually creates more motivation and more momentum. I think experimentation is much better than setting big goals. And the classic big goal is I'm going to give up sugar for the rest of my life, right? And so you crank on that for a couple of days, it's going really well. And then that thing, your weakness, crosses your path. In my case, coconut cake from Mulberry Street, crosses your path. And all of a sudden, the goal is gone. I've failed. You feel like a failure. You beat yourself up and throw everything out instead of getting right back. It's like, it's terrible, right? And you can feel even worse than when you started. So big goals can be treacherous. Experimentation can be fun. And then my favorite part of experimentation is the concept of neutral observation. If you remember from science class, there's no success or failure in experiments. You simply observe what's happening. It's not like, oh God, there's blue smoke. I wanted green smoke. Why is it blue? It's like, that's interesting. The smoke is blue. Let me think about that, right? A very different vibe. So bringing neutral observation to your life feels so much better than being mean to yourself and judging yourself harshly and others harshly. And the most powerful part of experimentation is it gives you experience. I'm not your guru. I can't tell you what's right for you. You get to decide by trying it and seeing if you want to keep it or seeing if you want to throw it out. By the way, everything I say today is for your consideration. You are the final decider. And if there's one thing to remember from experimentation, it's bringing neutral observation to your life. It can be a game changer. All right, let's turn to page 5 for your baseline self-awareness. We're going to start working this formula for self-leadership. All right, if you have your workbook, that's awesome. If not, the exercise is right here. And grab your pen and paper. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 all the time, 1 never, rate your level of agreement with the following. And there are 10 statements there for you to exercise your self-awareness on. So go ahead and do that. I'm gonna pause for about 2 minutes. We have a question. Where can we find the workbook, Chad?
I'll send the link in response to that question just a second. And then after I send that link, I'm going to be silent. Laura asked me, and I told her I would honor silence for that 60 seconds that I'm so bad at usually honoring. But if you can't find the workbook, it is in the chat box. I understand chat's disabled to send messages, but you should be able to click the link to open the workbook.
Good. Thank you. And remember, be honest with yourself as you take this. You're the only person that's going to see it. And we'll take another 15 seconds. All right. So it's time for another poll. What is your biggest opportunity? What did you have the lowest score on? Chad has put the poll on the screen. Go ahead and click the one that resonated most as an opportunity.
And I'll give you as a reminder, right, because we have participants from over 100 BFSG clients here. Your employer will have no idea what you respond back. This is truly anonymous to all of your respective employers, as well as other attendees on this webinar. So please don't be shy.
Yay.
Leave this up for just a little bit longer as like the responses are coming in at a pretty rapid click right here. This is one of those introspective things I mentioned at the very beginning, right? Laura's going to ask you to really think about yourself and hopefully make it a very positive environment for the group.
Neutral observation. Remember, there's no reason to beat yourself up for any of this. It's just like, that's interesting. Do I want to do anything about that?
Well, I mean, I could tell you, like, I feel rested most of the time, but sometimes I go to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. Not the best idea. My home life is usually pretty good, but every now and then, you never know. Like, family, friends, and life gets in the way of, right, taking care of ourselves in many, many months of the year.
Yeah, for most of my life, my self-talk was, I was nasty to myself. I remember when I learned the concept of self-talk and decided to actually listen to what I was saying to myself, and I was shocked.
But let me close.
Thankfully, it's not.
I'll put the results up here for the group too. I won't read all the different percentages, but I'll pull out at least like some of the big ones, right? Some of the big ones, like right at the top, when emotionally triggered, I'm able to respond. right, with wisdom rather than react with emotion, right? And I think the idea here, right, this is one that people need to work on, right? That was 14%.
Correct.
Right. 10% say I'm able to focus my attention and energy where needed throughout my day. People having a hard time just focusing on what they need to do. It'd be interesting to know how much of that is like virtual work versus an office work. Might have changed some of that over the last 4 or 5 years. People taking excellent care of their physical well-being, right? Maybe not having enough time to work out, do the gym and take care of themselves, eat healthy, etc. I mean, I find myself randomly doing fast food way too often, and I have to like rein myself back and start cooking at home again. Our biggest one here is more than halfway down, though. I feel well rested. I feel like we have a lot of people that just, either have a hard time sleep, they're working a lot, life's a lot, like all those different things that go on. And then the last big one that's double digits is the very bottom. I feel positive about my life most of the time. So I think a lot of people that maybe this is a perfect webinar for quite a few people on the line here today.
Fantastic. And I thank you all for sharing such personal information. Even though it's anonymous, it's still something to click that box and to recognize that this is an opportunity. For some of you, it may have been a surprise. For some of you, no surprise at all. And now you have an opportunity to do something about that or not. And again, I want to encourage you to look at it neutrally, whatever you learned there.
I think one of the
All
fun
right,
things, Laura, with sharing that is that most people on this responded to that. Everybody has something that they're needing to work on, right? Is that not something that for everybody to remember for themselves?
Chad, thank you for saying that. We're never done. We're never done. There is no perfect. And day to day, it can be different, right? So to have tools and skills is so important that you can pull out when you need it, either generally in life or just for the day. Speaking of tools, your very first self-leadership tool I want to share with you, and that's leveraging the power of choice. Disclaimer, there are many, many skills to self-leadership. This is first. And so when you ask questions later, perhaps it will fall under this umbrella. Perhaps it'll be outside. I just want to let you know there's a number of skills, and I'm just sharing this first one with you. And I want to introduce or reintroduce you to two men. Nelson Mandela, you have probably heard of. He was imprisoned for 27 years, and he was arrested for leading a campaign against apartheid in South Africa. And he was released in 1990, and he ended up rising to be the president of South Africa. And despite those circumstances, imprisoned, some would say unlawfully, unjustly, for 27 years, this is what he had to say. It is what we make out of what we have been given, not what we are given, that separates one person from another. It is what we make out of what we've been given. He was in prison for 27 years, and he's saying this. He still is a symbol of resilience. And that's why. It's because of this attitude. The second man I want to introduce you to is Viktor Frankl. You may or may not heard of him. He wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. Amazing. It should be required reading for all humans. And he was a psychiatrist. Well, let me start at the beginning. He was a concentration camp survivor. And when he was taken to the camps, he was a psychiatrist, neurologist. And so he entered the camps with both the neutrality of a scientist and also the humanity of the human. And so he made many observations during his time there, and he captured them in his book. And one of them I'd like to share with you: the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. So he's saying that even in a concentration camp, he could choose his attitude. And he saw other people doing that too. There were those that would throw themselves at the electric fence if given a nanosecond to do so, to end it all. And others that would fight to live up until their very last breath. It's because they were choosing their attitude, even in that horrible circumstance. So these men taught us that you always have a choice. We always have a choice. And this is your ultimate superpower. There's always a choice. If those two men can do it, I think I can in my little life. All right. So let's talk about outer choices and inner choices. An outer choice is a behavior. It's something that you can see on the outside of you. Here's a partial list. These are the things that came to my mind. You can take an action. Maybe you're sitting on something, not taking that action. Go ahead and take it. You can make a decision, get off the fence. That releases a lot of energy. Have a conversation with someone that will help you move through this situation. Delegate, take a break, seek counsel from someone wise in your life. Exercise, do a joy-provoking activity, engage in self-care. Again, a partial list, but there are outer choices you can make to feel better in your life today. Likely, you're not in prison, so likely there's an outer choice you can make. Well, let's talk about inner choices. These are things that are more internal rather than things you can see outside. Taking a breath is on the border there. The first is to take responsibility. Remember, whatever is happening in your life, you are the only one that has any control. So take responsibility for that. Grab those reins. And if you take one thing from today, pause when triggered. Pause when triggered. If you can stop talking because you may say something you regret. Pause when triggered and take a breath. Ideally, a deep belly breath. And that will activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your natural calming mechanism. And it can open you up to wisdom and clarity and just a better result outside of you. These are all related. Reframe what's happening, think a different thought, consider an alternate story. I was an overthinker for most of my life, and I would run scenarios over and over and over again. And I spent most of my life stressed and frustrated. Thankfully, I'm not that way anymore. And so it's important to remember that we have a theory in how we have a power and the ability in how we view our world and how we make assumptions about what's happening. Let's say you got an email from your boss and it says, "See me tomorrow." Now, you can take that as, "Oh no, I'm in trouble. What did I do?" And you can spin, you can stay awake all night, wake up numerous times, whatever. You can go there. Or you can say, maybe I should just see her tomorrow. Maybe she was on her phone and had to do that real quick. Maybe she wants to compliment you. Maybe she just wants to align on something that you're working on. Nothing bad. You don't have enough information to suffer, okay? So don't bring suffering on yourself through your thinking. I'm an expert, former expert. I know what that can do to you. Accept what is. Ooh, this is tough. You know, accepting what is the path to peace, by the way. It's the path to peace. You may not like it, but it's here now, right? It's here now. So you have a choice. You can suffer over it or you can let it go and just accept it. Tough. I call it the A word. It's so tough. You can find gratitude in the moment. You can identify learning. I try to do those two things. Even if it seems like the poop is hitting the fan, I try to find something I can feel grateful for. And usually it's, I'm going to grow through this. I'm going to learn something through this. I just got to keep going, right? So those are examples of inner choices that you can make. Now, an outer choice may not be available, as it was not available to Nelson Mandela and Viktor Frankl, but you always have an inner choice available. I want you to know that. And that is tremendous power that you have over your life. All right, so I want to direct you to pages 7 and 8 in your workbook. I'm also showing it on the screen, so if you don't have that workbook, it's okay. And I want to practice. Remember, we do experiments and build habits, so we're going to do it right now. We're going to put this skill to work in something real and present in your life, right? This is about your individual experience. It's called leveraging the power of choice. How it works. Identify a recent stressful situation. By the way, if you're able, if you're not driving, I invite you to write it down, even on a piece of paper, rather than just thinking it through. It can be more powerful and the learning will be deeper if indeed you write it down. So, stressful situation, how did you feel in that moment? And how did it affect your behavior, if at all? I lashed out at my partner, right? How did it affect your behavior? What outer choices could you make in a similar situation next time that may better serve you and the situation? See examples on page 6 of your workbook, or you also have them here on the screen. After each idea, state how it would make you feel to make that choice. And come up with at least one. And what inner choices, number 3, could you make in a similar situation next time that may better serve you? So same question. And after each idea, state how it would make you feel. definitely come up with at least one thing in the inner choice category, because you always have an inner choice. So I will give you 3 minutes to do that. Take about another minute. All right, let's bring that to completion. And I'm wondering how your experience was of that. And I know we don't have the chat. Chad, shall they write some experiences in the question section?
Yeah, drop it in the Q&A. I'll dismiss them. We do have actually a couple other comments in there in the meantime too. So
yes,
I will dismiss these ones. It's like, don't take offense to that, and I'll hold any actual questions so that we can get to those at the very end of the session today.
There is one question in there for sure.
There is.
Thank you,
I like that
Chad.
other comment too. Did you see that other comment?
Yes, I did. It's fantastic. It says, the joy we feel has little to do with the circumstances of our lives and everything to do with the focus of our lives. Yes. All right. What I'd love to hear from you is, were you able to make a choice? And I guess what I want to hear is, how did it feel before you made a choice, and how did it feel after? So I'd love to see two feelings in there. One is from question 1, the second part, and the other is just from either part of the exercise, inner or outer choices. Did you notice a difference in how it made you feel? I'd like to talk about a client. It's actually more than one client had a similar experience, but they were unhappy in their work. They were unhappy in their role, and really felt captive. They felt stuck and miserable, basically. And so by reminding them that they had a choice, they didn't have to stay there. They could leave. They were choosing not to leave for whatever reason, fear, too much work to find another job, whatever, right? By not taking that choice, they indeed feel stuck. But reminding them that they had a choice was powerful. And they're like, oh, I am signing up for this. I could leave if I wanted. And it opened up all this energy. And a little trick, if you hate your job, you can start looking at it as a kind of a cash project, something that provides you a living so you can do things that you love outside of work. And looking at it that way can, again, be a tremendous relief. And both of the people that I'm thinking about right now ended up finding a role that was deeply satisfying. And in the meantime, before they did that, just knowing they had a choice and that they were signing up for it every day was powerful and made them feel so much better inside instead of feeling captive and stuck. All right, it looks like we're not getting any feedback on the exercise.
Laura,
Here's one. Great.
I have a situation I was kind of curious about because sometimes it's not always it's an external stressor. So it's maybe your partner or spouse that maybe suffers from anxiety and they don't always process things the way you would process them. I can tell you, I have a kind of a situation like that. And one thing that I have done from an inner choice is I really have to pause and just kind of allow things to play out because most of the time they're worrying and stressing about something that likely will never happen. So you have to kind of let it play out. But then at the same time, you can't say, see, you should never have worried. Like, how do you kind of help if you have somebody in your life that kind of behaves in those ways? Are there things that you can do to maybe alleviate it?
Tina, thank you for that extraordinarily relatable example. It's such a great question. The truth is, and this is another hard truth, that everyone has the right to react, be anything they want to be, right? As adults, we have the right to be any way we want. Now, there may be a consequence. You could get arrested if you punch someone in the face when you're angry, or the relationship could end, Tina, God forbid. We're not talking about that. But there may be a consequence to these things. But they have the right, whoever you're talking about has the right to be exactly the way they are. Now, part of us, and I'm certainly speaking for myself, wants to help. And that's lovely. It's benevolent. But it's, in a sense, it's not our job. We may have some influence. We may, but they don't have to take our influence. Again, they have agency over their lives. So you're left with an inner choice, and you made a brilliant one. Just let him or her be themselves. Let them emote. Let them do what they do, and I instead end up holding space for them, like holding a loving space for them to do this. And what's interesting when this comes up with clients, when they're able to be that way, strangely, the person that they're talking about often changes and becomes less of that thing that is bothering you. It's weird. In a relationship, it's like an organism, and when one changes, the other usually changes to fit in this organism. And so when you change your way of being and you're not reacting, you're not trying to fix, you're not trying all that stuff, sometimes they change to show less of that behavior. I call it weird magic. Thank you, Tina. All right, we have some fantastic reflections here. Before, humiliated, disappointed, frustrated, shocked, and scared. How's that for a picture? Thank you for sharing. And then after, happy being alive, grateful, more present, more conscious, more responsive. Amazing. That's the power of choice. Second one, this weekend I had to make a choice to put my cat to sleep due to complications with an emergency surgery. It felt awful, even after having a conversation with a vet who let us know we were out of options. Well, it can feel awful, and that sounds very human. So I encourage you to really embrace your humanness and feel the emotions that you're feeling, because they're there for a reason, and eventually they will likely pass. Could you make a choice to celebrate the life of the pet that you loved so and think about all those wonderful memories? You could, but I encourage you to let yourself mourn. Let yourself mourn. Oftentimes individuals are reluctant. Oh yeah?
18 months ago, we had to put down a 16-year-old puppy.
Oh,
Not really a puppy anymore.
I know.
And
I
even
still
a new puppy we got just a few months ago, we still have the shrine to our last dog, right? There's a shrine in our house that makes us remember him every day.
Mm-hmm. We have one for Axel too. Sweet boy. We miss him. Sweet boy. Oftentimes individuals are reluctant to seek help from professionals such as yourself and therapists. Okay, these are questions rather than reflections. Okay, we'll leave the questions then. Thank you for your reflections on the exercise, and whether you shared it with us or not. This was your experience, and whatever happened in that experience is just right. And I hope that that what I taught today has been helpful to you. So let's boil it down. What have we just done? You've taken responsibility for something in your life. You brought awareness to it, and you have made a choice. You've practiced making a choice. And we have put this whole situation through the 3-step formula for feel-good success. You brought awareness to it. You identified that recent stressor. So you're not in default. You're looking at your life, right? You're outside looking in. You identified that stressor. You identified your initial reaction. And then you identified what's possible. This is self-awareness. You used that skill, remembering there's always a choice. There's outer choices, sometimes available, but there's always an inner choice you can make. If you don't like how you're feeling, you have a choice. And then we did that experiment by doing the exercise. And I want to encourage you to do this experiment in an ongoing way. The next time you have a challenge, notice, you have to bring awareness to it, and identify a choice you can make to manage it more effectively. All right. These are the 3 steps for feel-good success, and I hope this has all helped you feel more in control of your life and your career. And lastly, I want to invite you to just take a minute to identify your biggest takeaways from today. Also on the last page, I think it's page 9, the last page of your workbook, situations where you can most use the skill of choice, and what actions do you want to take as a result of being here? Those are your questions. In the meantime, and Chad, I'm going to, I want to ask them for their takeaways here. Is there a way to do that without ruining your question?
Nope, drop it in the Q&A. Drop it in the Q&A box.
All right.
That's easy.
Drop it in the Q&A. I would love to hear your biggest takeaway. If you're only taking one thing out of this virtual room today, what is it? And if you see others saying the same thing, you don't have to be original. Just put yours in there too, even if it's the same. You always have a choice. Excellent.
Well, these come into, I think you had a couple more reflections that came in that are probably worth sharing, right? Somebody said their spouse, they're trying to move across the country for an opportunity with their work, but right now they are the current breadwinner for the family. And it's become stressful to figure out what are they supposed to do being the bigger breadwinner, finding a new job so their spouse can have a good opportunity. Definitely a difficult one. You have another one, frustrated with a spouse because their thinking is often negative. So they say they need to go to another room and just think and handle and how to process it before they can come back into this conversation.
Yeah, that's an excellent strategy to not try to fix it. And one choice, and I'm sorry about this, but it's true. We always get to decide if we want to continue being in relationship with this person. We must always remember that. And if we decide that we are, we need to remember that we're making that decision. I know, especially when I was newly married, I would remind myself, wait, Laura, you picked him. You picked him. You knew what you were getting into. Let's just accept it, right? But you do always have the choice to leave a relationship. If you don't choose to leave a relationship, then the job is up to you to learn to manage yourself better in that relationship. Yes, the other question about the move is a tough one. It's a tough one. And there's so much information that I don't have. And I think the challenge is for that breadwinner to really work with themselves, to calm themselves, and to have conversations that need to be had. You know, does the partner that wants to move, does that have to happen? Just to lead themselves through this in a calm and measured way. would be super helpful. I know easier said than done.
So Laura, in the Q&A, the ones that I put
Mhm.
answer live are people that are, I think, responding to actions and takeaway before we get to Q&A. And so if there's still an option to type an answer, that's a question, leave it. But I think you do have a few that you can read off for the group.
Great. You always have a choice is a top takeaway. And Blanca, thank you for this. As just as it happens in my life or working with clients, they'll say, I know this, I just forget it. So you say, I've known this, but somehow I keep forgetting and not following it. Experimentation is a way of getting started on a task that I'm procrastinating on. I'm so glad I could remind you of that and get you going. Find a positive takeaway. Miserable at work, but now I look at it as a means to have money to travel and take vacations. Yes, treat it as a cash project. And maybe forever or maybe temporarily, but it really changes your life. My self-awareness in a stressful situation, how to better handle the war situation when your relatives are in the wars. Okay. That's a question?
Yeah.
Oh, answer live. I see this. Thank you. I now see what you said. Not to rush reactions, especially if negative. Remind myself I have a choice in the moment. Yes. And pause when triggered. Please pause when triggered. You'll create a lot less wreckage around you. What may take away from this workshop is realizing I am unique and I have choices in my life. Oh, that's beautiful, Lucila. And then retirement is close is another takeaway. Nice to know.
Even if you're relatively young, it's going to go fast. Retirement is closer than you think. This is our business.
I still can't believe how old I am. It's the strangest thing. All right. And so you've identified your takeaways. I want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your attention. For those of you that participated in the kind of sort of chat. And Chad?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Troop.
It's just been a pleasure to be here.
Laura, awesome presentation. I think for so many people, it was insanely valuable to have this kind of content. But it's not the content everybody thinks they want or need. I think when you go through it, though, you realize that everybody can learn something from it. We do have some questions in here. There's also some new reflections, but let me get to a couple of the questions first, and then we can go back to sharing some reflections that people shared with us.
Let's do it.
The very most upvotes is how I'm sorting this because we have some people thumbs upping. So as a reminder for the group out there, right, where all the Q&A is active, if there's a question in there already, please do continue typing questions in. We are happy to stay on. We build this thing for 90 minutes in case we have a lot of questions. So the first one I have is I have a parent who sometimes does some negative talk with my sibling, right? This one's a sister. The parent is upset about their health and sometimes blames the children. Any suggestions on how to remain compassionate with her and stay positive, even if it's just for my own well-being?
Yes, this is tough. And another terrific universal reflection. I go back to what I said earlier. This person, the parent, has a right to be anywhere, any way they want. And chances are excellent that they've been that way for a long, long time. I often do an exercise with my clients to pick an animal. We go through a process, but we pick an animal that describes how that person is right now. And let's say that person is an alligator. And then we go through a process and you come up with an animal you wish they were, and you wish they were a golden retriever. And there's a problem here. You've got an alligator and you wish they're a golden retriever. It ain't going to happen. Science is amazing, but it hasn't yet figured out how to do that. You got yourself an alligator. So to answer your question, to really accept the alligator, decide if you want them in your life or not. As your parent, you probably do. Limit your exposure if you can. But when you're exposed to them, remember you have a choice that you want to continue being with them. Remember that. And then remember that probably deep down, you mentioned compassion, that you do love this person and you feel for them and they're suffering and they're going to continue suffering likely because you got yourself an alligator. And so to hold that loving space for them and let them be who they are and do what they do. And it is easier said than done. Remember also you have a limited time with that parent, and remember that these days are precious. Even if they can be unpleasant, they're precious. I hope that's helpful.
It is. Next one I have is this person lost one of their parents almost a year ago. Still trying to recover and find clarity. Right? Any tips, suggestions just to get back to normal?
Yeah, well, normal, who knows what that is now? And because life is different when you lose a parent. And I encourage you to really embrace your humanness. It's human to mourn, and to allow yourself to do that. And some great ways to move, you see, emotions are chemical and they're meant to move through us. And sometimes, and I was an expert stuffer, which is one reason I drank, I stuffed my emotions. And so I encourage you to perhaps do some free form writing. Just write whatever you're feeling. Don't judge it. You can swear, you can whine, you can do all kinds of things when you're writing. And that can help move these emotions through you. And you may start feeling lighter as a result. And I encourage you, when you finish that writing, to just drop it in the shredder, so you feel really safe when you're writing it, that no one will ever see it. But in the meantime, just be patient and loving with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself.
So the next one I have here is oftentimes individuals seem reluctant to seek help from professionals, right, such as yourself or therapists. And to that end, but everybody, I did actually post Laura's website in the chat box. Again, I know you can't respond back to us in chat, but I did put her website there in case you're interested. I put a survey link in case you're interested. That's how we figure out what content do we want to do in our next series for all of you as well. So definitely let us know your thoughts. But to the question is, how can somebody encourage, right, either themselves or someone else, right? Maybe it's a friend or family member that needs to be encouraged to get over the hump and seek the help that they may need.
Woo! Recurring theme here. People have the right to be any way they want. And so that's core. And then you ask yourself, do I have any control or influence over this? And as I said to Tina, you may have influence, but it sounds like you've probably tried, and they're not playing. They're just not playing. So that is their right to continue suffering. It's a hard truth. And I, as a coach, I love to lift people out of suffering, but they have to want it. It's just like getting sober. You have to want it or it ain't going to work. So really allowing them to suffer. It's sad to say, but if they're ready, when they're ready, they know that there's somewhere they can go. So yes, you can continue to try to influence, but that can add to a lot of frustration on your part. So you may just have to accept the situation that's in front of you, accept what is. Hard truths.
So the next one I have here is like any tips on just prioritizing self-care, right? Like just taking breaks in a busy workday. I think a lot of people get there's so many tasks and things to do, and especially emails and all these things that come in. Any tips on prioritizing self-care?
Well, first, prioritize it. Have it as an intention that you would like to add some to your day. So start with that. I love reminders coming up on my phone, like walk or put a Post-it in my environment to remind me. But to somehow set yourself up to remember, because we forget what we want to work on. I'll speak for myself. So that's first. Next, remember, these can be bite-sized pieces. Jump up and down 10 times. You will feel very different than you did sitting at your desk grinding. Go for a walk around the building. That will take about, my building, it will take about, I think I've timed it, 3 minutes. I have walking as part of my workday. That's what I've built up to. Like, it doesn't feel right if I don't walk. And here's the deal. When you prioritize self-care, especially in your workday, you will find through experimentation, I have a feeling, that you come back fresh. Your mind is clearer. Work is easier, right? Grinding and trying to figure something out, for me, doesn't go anywhere good, right? I have to get up, leave, walk around, come back, and I'm fresh as a daisy. So I encourage you to experiment and try out what works for you. And bite-sized pieces is my hint. Just little little things make a big difference. Turn on, crank some music and dance just for one song. It'll change your day. Seriously.
So next one I have on first bit of observation, something I think are just a lot of questions that not everyone will want assistance. You can't save everyone, right? And I think it kind of goes back to themes you're
Correct.
saying, like when they're ready for it, they're ready for it. And until they're ready for it, right, it can be hard for the loved ones around them. The next question I have here, and this is the war situation you started to answer earlier. How do you better handle the war situation when relatives are in this war zone, right? And you feel like you can't do anything about it?
Well, sadly, to accept what is, this is what's happening, and you are here and they are there, and you can't do anything about it. So that's really tough. And it's the againstness, it's wishing you were and wishing you could do all these things and not knowing what to do. That's what causes all the frustration. And obviously genuine care for these loved ones. And so I encourage you to send them loving thoughts. I know that sounds trite, but it can make you feel better to feel like you are infusing them with love and safety.
I like it. So
I get
the next one
a
is
little misty. Anyway, and also have compassion for yourself during this time of suffering, because you have a loving heart, and that's why you're suffering.
Yeah. Before I do the next question, I mean, somebody asked, it's not so much related, but can they hear us and hear their voices? No, in Zoom webinar with, at least with BFSG, for compliance purposes, all of the attendees are muted with the exception of the hosts and panelists. So me, Laura, and Tina. We can't hear anything on your end, and we actually turn off the ability to even unmute your lines, which is why we ask all questions and comments to come through the Q&A box. The next that I have here, which is interesting, being the one male with 2 women on the line, is any statistics with women versus men on handling and making the right choices. This person says, I feel like men, they don't really like change in life, but women often need to accommodate it, is the kind of the way I'm interpreting this comment.
Ooh, let me read the question. Handling and making the right choices. I feel men don't like change in life, but women most of the time. That could be quite a generalization. I don't have statistics. My experience with my clients and with living in the world is I find that women are more apt to second guess themselves, agonize over decisions. And I have found, and again, generalizations, I found that men tend to make decisions more easily. I feel that men don't like change in life, but women do most of the time. Yeah, gosh, I'm not sure that's true. I'm just not sure that's true. So Lucille, I invite you to open your mind. That may be your experience, but it may be painting with a broad brush, because everybody's an individual. I did share my broad brush thoughts based on my experience.
Next one, and this could just be get more sleep, but any tips on just feeling more well rested?
Yes, get more sleep, but if you can get to a point where your days are not as stressful. See, the stress really, and I'm a former stress monster, it just sucks the life out of you. And so you're depleted all the time. So sleep doesn't get you to par. You're just still depleted. So use your first tool of choice, see if that makes a difference. But the next step is to really learn to master your emotional state of being, which is something I teach outside of this webinar. I'll have a course coming up within a few weeks on my website, and really learn the mechanics of where your emotions are coming, because they can really, as I said, suck the life out of you. So that's my counsel.
And I give you go Tina, sorry.
I was gonna say, I actually found with sleep, because I was a terrible sleeper for a while, and I was advised that my next day starts the night before.
Yeah.
So if I can wind down and I can actually get to sleep before 10 o'clock, for whatever reason, that's my cutoff time, I actually will get a good night's rest and I'll wake up naturally in the morning. But if I get to sleep after 10 o'clock anytime, because I normally was a night owl, and when I would do that, I would wake up later and I would just feel exhausted. So for me, I had to kind of find out a little bit more about, what was my natural sleep cycle.
Yes, and everyone's an individual. You experimented, and what I heard clearly, Tina, is that you made a commitment to this 10 o'clock thing, and you also noticed that when you didn't honor it, so you were experimenting.
Right,
When you didn't
right.
honor it, it didn't work as well, and that's a wonderful strategy, and it sounds like it works for you. And you made me think of one more thing for sleep, especially if you have a spinning mind, as I did for so many years. If you can just write, just do some quick freeform writing or even freeform talking before your head hits the pillow, just out loud to nobody. It can move a lot of that stuff through you and leave you more free to have a good night's sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
There's a lot of studies and stats out there too, right? There's some things like just take your cell phone out of the room, right?
Oh,
just
for
the
sure.
light, and it's a distraction. Just buy an alarm clock back to like the old school and put yourself in the living room on do not disturb. I mean, I could say like even in my own house, like my wife, she wants to go to bed between 9 and 9:30, but it's not to fall asleep until 10, but she just needs to wind down with a book, right? And it's like she's thinking about work, and it's the hardest thing is when you've just stopped working or just stopped whatever you were doing, like mentally she's just thinking about life, and her brain goes in circles and circles and circles. And even reading leadership books doesn't help her because it feels like work. Like she
Oh,
needs
for
some
sure.
fictional story that can take her completely out of the element. And watching TV, right? Half of those like Game of Thrones and Black Mirror, all these different shows you have are also can be stressors. And she just needs a book that can take her out of her element.
It's great. And also just having your nervous system at a kind of a reset state at least once a day can make a huge difference to your level of rest. And I used to, meditation, I've never enjoyed, and recently have so, because I got a new app about stress on my watch, and I was seeing my body stress. I don't feel stressed mentally, but my body was stressed. So it set me on this path to rediscovering meditation and experimenting with it and seeing how it brings the stress in my body down. And so it's real. What you hear about meditation is real. And if you can do just 10 minutes a day, it can help you feel more rested. I suspect. You get to decide, you experiment.
So this next one I have is right, one of their children moving in with them out of necessity in their life, right? They have 3 pets though that are not trained. This person recently moved somewhere where they have a 2-pet limit and they love where they live. They're a little bit worried about like potentially getting kicked out, and it's becoming overwhelmed because they are still trying to support their child, and their child is kind of saying like they're not there for their like. And how does this person stay positive, kind of accept what's happening, and any just tips?
Ooh. Well, remember you made a choice in allowing them to move in. So let's start with that, taking responsibility for that choice. You didn't have to do that. It was a loving act that you did. And but it wouldn't necessarily be loving if you didn't. You get to choose, but you made the choice. So know that this is a product of your choice, you and your anyone else involved in that decision. The pet thing is tough. I guess I would do my best not to worry about it, not worry about getting caught. Like if that happens, then you deal with it, right? So not worrying about that, because that can be very stressful. Or really ask that, and it's a big ask, but ask your adult child to, they can't get rid of their pets. That's tough. But as a part of the deal, right? This is what's happening here. If you want to live here, this is what we need to be happening. It really has to do with the dynamics of your family. And in the meantime, just remember that you made that choice. So you are now reaping the consequences of the choice. And perhaps that can help you remember why you made the choice, probably out of love and support, and to think about that instead. No easy answers on that.
So the next one I have comes here, and I think 20 years sober. This is probably right up your alley and helping people here, but kind of saying, what are your thoughts on something? And this may be 2 or more substances, right? Not just alcohol, but is being sober on one, but not the other substance or life or interaction, whatever it is. Is that still successful sobriety?
opinions differ on this. I choose to live without substance, any substance. I know there's something called marijuana maintenance, right? Where you don't drink anymore, but you smoke pot or do gummies or whatever. This, in a sense, you're still escaping your life in some way. You're still needing to leave your current state to find another. To me personally, that's not sobriety. It is, if the quality of their life, here's a caveat, if the quality of their life is better with whatever new substance, if they're not creating the damage and wreckage and chaos that they were, perhaps it's better. It's a personal choice. Yeah.
So the next one I have here, I'm actually saving a number of reflections so we can conclude this with a few reflections, right? Since I think it was kind of the topic before we end this thing. But getting back to, I do have another one that is kind of seems like a question. Is this person's on the opposite end of the situation with helping someone get over the hump and into therapy. They know that they need help. And they just tend to get overwhelmed and give up. I know it's affecting the people around me, but I can't figure out how to get the help I need. When I can tell you, I have a friend that went through something really similar, and it was insanely hard for them to find a therapist in the first place. But then also every therapist, like there's pros and cons. Like some were just like talking to a friend and it was always just saying what they felt they needed versus actually what might help. They would like pinpoint something that they said and like stick to it. Like it's always their spouse. And this person's like, well, I needed help like 10 years before I met my spouse. But like, why are you stuck on my spouse and all this? Like, so any just tips for this person that like needs help themselves?
Well, tips for that person. First of all, I acknowledge you for being aware that you want and need help. That's fantastic. Not everybody, as we know, not everyone gets there. And then I would encourage you to experiment. So if you can't find a therapist in your area with availability or that takes your insurance, investigate some of the therapy apps. Try it. Also, Chad, you're speaking to the importance of fit. Whether you're working with a therapist or a coach, I encourage you to find the right fit. And you may have to kiss a few toads before you do, right? But find the person that resonates with you, that you feel can help you in the way that you need. Don't feel bad if this person's not for you. Just let you know, I don't feel it's a fit, and move on, right? But I encourage you to keep trying. It sounds like you have a genuine desire for help. And remember, there is coaching, there is training, there is coaching, there is therapy. They are different, and there are gazillions of different types of coaches with different styles offering different things. So just be aware of that should you be seeking a coach.
So next one, they say that it might be a strange question. This person's 68 and know they need to start their retirement, but their mind is saying no. They work in financial services. I mean, really, you could take this really by any professional services type of business. This can apply to. And they feel they're not done yet. Question, like, what are their choices and what actions really should they take? I'm going to put a link for this one too, because we did a great webinar last year on finding your retirement mindset that really kind of speaks to how do you cross that? Like, how do you go from 40 or 60 or 80 hours a week to 0? And is there a process to scale that back over time? It's probably our second most well-received webinar we ever did. So I'll give you that link in the Q&A box too. But any tips you might have, I think would be appreciated.
Well, my first tip is to access what you're sharing about, Chad. That sounds like fantastic information. And I'm not going to talk about that. I want to ask you what your heart says. Is it your heart that says you're not done? Do you still love what you do? Do you enjoy it? What's telling you you should retire? Are you exhausted? Is it wreaking havoc on your life to continue working? So look at the cost benefit. And if your heart is saying, keep going, I feel great. This is my passion. I love it. Keep going. This is your life. You get to choose what's right for you. But look at the cost as well. And if the cost is high enough, my husband is aging. He's almost 20 years older than I am. And I get to see how his life is getting smaller, right? And how hard that is with each change, things he can't do anymore, it's just different. And so I encourage you also, at some point, you will reach the point where it is time to retire. So access what Chad mentioned And also realize that there are different phases in life, and you may be entering that next one, and it may not feel terrific at first glance. So know that there are different phases, and part of you wants to live that same life forever, and recognize that that's probably not possible. But hey, work into your 90s if you love it. Keep going. You decide.
So the last one I have that's kind of a question, and I'll leave the last two for you as their observations to close us out. But this person says they're in their late 40s and single. Parents want to move in. They're not ready for that, and it's kind of stressing them out a little bit, just having to break. How do you break the news to your parents that you don't want them to move in with you? They're in good shape, and they should be able to live on their own, and one of them is negative and opinionated.
Ooh.
I mean, it's any ideas with how to even deal with that?
Well, I acknowledge you for knowing that that's not right for you and your family, right? And this is big kid stuff. This is really being an adult among your adult parents. There is no easy way to do this. It's really about being able to have that conversation and to be clear in your own mind why it won't work. And this is really, as I said, being an adult and understanding that you will likely upset them and being willing to do that. And it sounds like you're willing to do that because the cost of having them live with you is greater. So if you were working with me, we would work on building your confidence and ability to have that conversation. But I don't have any more specifics right now.
So that's the last one. For compliance, I do have to ask you to put that disclosure slide up real quick, but I did in the Q&A box. I feel like these are tailor-made for you to address because they're reflections to one of the last questions you asked of the group as we wrap this thing up.
All right, I'm going to start with the second one. You can love someone but not like them. Yes. Oh my goodness, it's so true. And you get to, yes, if you choose to keep the person, parent, for instance, in life, create a plan on how to handle it, limit interactions, time, and acceptance. Yes, just know that you are going to see that alligator or see that bear or see that snake. You know, there's a lot of animals. Just know that you're going to see that. Don't expect them to be a golden retriever, and deal with who you have and just love them and know that you have limited time. And remember, you can always exit the relationship. That's always a choice. And lastly, sometimes it's helpful to just stop and think for a second. It's always helpful to stop and think for a second. Maybe you can't solve a problem all at once, but you can make choices to make the situation better. That's less overwhelming. Absolutely. So I cannot stress enough the importance of self-awareness, the importance of giving yourself enough time to think and consider what's happening, to step out of your life and look at it instead. And the quality of your life will change dramatically and quickly.
Yep. I love it. Laura, thanks so much for your time today. That is the last thing we have for the groups. I want to thank everybody that's still on the line. Thank you for your time. Hopefully you appreciated all of Laura's comments and advice today. Laura, any closing remarks before we wrap this thing up?
Well, it's just been such a pleasure to be here and to share this important information on this hidden power that we have to lead ourselves. And the very first step is remembering that we always have a choice. You are never a victim. You have the power. And with that, I thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. We will touch base soon. Thanks everyone that's still on the line. Thank you for the thank yous coming in, by the way, Laura, if you're still watching them.
Ooh, love it. I'm still watching. Keep them coming. Come on. Dinah,
thanks everyone. Talk to you all soon.
Thanks for attending, everyone.